So I was just thinking of what to open with on this part 2 of, Trump breaks the logjam. If you love your country more than the oligarchy, if you have strength to love your country more than the oligarchy is actually what I should say. Because a lot of people are weak and they don't have the intestinal fortitude or the strength to pipe up. People on Cape Cod are like this. I think the fake news media here on Cape Cod makes us that way, not me. But I think a lot of people are weak because it's such a tenacious hold. It's so pernicious, this oligarchy thing. So, if you love America more than you love the oligarchy. So I think the Bushes and the Clintons love America, but their actions speak louder than words. They love the oligarchy more. And you can love America and love your evil masters in the oligarchy, the rich on Nantucket, who did a deal with Bill Weld, along with the DEQE at that time. So they did a deal. I didn't come out smelling like a rose, but Dad always said I could fall into a cesspool and come out smelling like a rose. That's just my nature. I'll just keep working like a bulldog, bulldoggedly. Bulldoggy was the name of that book I wrote, 50 pages, which I'm in the process of rewriting and republishing with some help here. So I think you have to be strong, Cape Codders, and you have to say, if this man is not a paranoid schizophrenic off his meds, if that's not me, and I claim not to have the mental illness at all, let alone delusions of grandeur, right? That's kind of silly. And also, what else is silly is this. There was this controversy in Taunton State Hospital about the parentage of my second child, Tom. So they kept asking me, these, nurses and shrinks, how sure are you, about this business of, the Tom? Well, I'd say about maybe 80%, 85, I don't know, maybe 9, no, maybe not that much. I'm not really sure 100%. Actually, I lied. I was 100% sure, because it was admitted to me that, this child could be aborted. And I said no. Keep the child, Anyway, that happened before too, so it wasn't the first time with that. But I never agreed to an abortion at any point in my life. I never could agree to that. Anyway, that's central in this story. So I would ask Christians to look into this and support Trump to look into this. The good Christians, not here on Cape Cod. These Christians here on Cape Cod, they love the devil and these criminals in government more than they love God, as far as I'm concerned. They want an easy life, as I mentioned. They're weak. The weak people want an easy life. And they're in politics. The weak people are also in the clergy. Priests can be very weak. Reverends can be very weak. And they can tend to defer to the establishment and not defer or even work with someone that says anything anti-establishment, because I think it's, Romans 8. God puts all these people in power and these people have control and it's all from God. So you can look in the Bible, You can look to Romans to justify that and slavery and every other thing. And, where's Romans 8 here? I'll just read that. My wife and I love to read the Bible together. And I love that part of my life, and I love my wife. We were going to do a show here. So Not sure if it's 8, but let me read a little bit of 8. There is therefore now no condemnation to them which are in Christ Jesus, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. For the law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus hath made me free from the law of sin and death. I'm going to skim down. Now, and the children then heirs, that's 17, joint heirs with Christ. 18, sufferings of the present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed to us. So it's about us and our suffering too. About vanity. I guess I'm missing it here. So anyway, I'm not sure where this is. Maybe it was 12:8. Huh? Not 8:12. Yeah, maybe it's here. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that we present your bodies a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And not be conformed. This is one of my favorites in the Bible. Pam says it's one of hers. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. And be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. That's the last verse. Anyway, different gifts, verse 6, differing according to the grace that is given to us. And I always told my Sunday school kids, I have this gift for politics, and I can get in there and fight and hang on there and hang in, And sometimes I think God wants such a person in the fight, in democracy, which I believe, and a lot of these weak people in Christ don't believe in democracy. I think that's a weakness. Because I think if Jesus were here, he would say, get with it. This democracy here, not any particular democracy, but democratic rule, democratic republic, etc. This is from God, and all this Old Testament is filled with these evil kings that do bad things, and then God comes in and there's bad people and he wipes them out. That's one way to say I hate you, is wipe out the whole village, So I'd hate to say God was a hater, but you wipe out a village, it's not exactly a loving thing to do. Not one is good, so wipe them out. So we, I think, are gone down that path right now. We can probably pull back from going down that bad road, but we have to be anti-evil or anti-devil in our research and development on this issue about the DNA switch. Now, of course, you could say, well, it's a modern day, you can just do the test. But Judge Ordonez said no to doing the test the second time. And she looked over at my ex-wife and said, do you mind if we do this? She's not exactly a King Solomon, speaking of the Bible there. So the ex-wife said, no, we're not going to do this test again. It's already been done. So King Solomon would have said, you remember the story, okay, slice the baby in half. You remember that? Well, along the same lines, King Solomon, which Judge Ordonez was no King Solomon, said, okay, well, then we're not going to do it if you don't want to do it. Well, she knew what the corruption was. Either that or she didn't, and she was just so dumb. She was one of the dumbest people I've ever known being a lawyer or judge. In this case, a judge. But she was legendarily a dum-dum. I can't tell you how dumb she was. And she kept calling me back to Nantucket, to break me. I went to so many hearings on Nantucket. And then, she put me in jail for like 4 months, and I don't know why. My brother didn't know why. What was the cause of that, And then I got out after 30 days. They were trying to get me back into Taunton, is what they were trying to do. So I spent 30 days. I said, no way, I ain't talking to this shrink. No way. I wouldn't talk to him. So the officers at this is the old jail up on the hill there. And this was a good guy, too, that led me down there. He said, you have to go. You don't have to talk to him. So I didn't talk to him. I said, I don't want to talk to you. He said, okay, back to your cell. It was like a brush with death to me, to get back into Taunton. They would have killed me, rogered me, etc. But I didn't get pulled back in there. Instead, I spilled my guts as soon as I got out on fish folk. And so when I say you've got to find the fish folk record of what I was talking about, because it goes all into these murders. Not all of them, because at that point they all weren't done. But to cover up for a DNA switch, would they do it? Do you think they would? Yep, they would. It'll never be proven. They'll get let off the hook like all the other government workers, I would think. They get let off the hook. Okay. Don't do it again. I was slapped on the wrist for my vehicular homicide, speaking of getting slapped on the wrist too. So, the proper thing for Trump to do would be to have his Justice Department and FBI look into this. And I would say, since Pam and I are moving to Florida, they may want to use the less corrupt people of Florida. Maybe the Jacksonville FBI could look into the sins of the Boston FBI. That might make sense. So if it's found out, and it's real easy to find out, and they already know that there was a DNA switch done. So if they find that out formally and you see that in the paper, I'll work with Trump and the Justice Department and the FBI. I could very well work for the FBI and go around to their different offices and say, be careful. When you're given the opportunity to work for these rich folks on Nantucket or whoever they are in the oligarchy, you better think twice, because you're going to ruin this country if you start up with that. So Bill Weld, maybe he didn't realize what he was doing. He seemed like an okay guy. I was always wondering, why don't the Republicans run him instead of Bob Dole? He would have won, and that would have made sense. He was a firecracker. He was a great politician. He did a good job on so many levels. And if he lied and did bad things to get in, a lot of politicians do that. But I think he may still be the property of the oligarchy on Nantucket. And of course, when I say on Nantucket, and I know, that when it was reported that Hillary Clinton, and Trump were called to Nantucket pretty much as soon as they won their respective nominations. They were called to Nantucket, and they dutifully went to Nantucket. And that was like the oligarchy establishment's way of saying, we're clean, right? We're good. You like us, right? We're doing a good job. You approve. When Trump went to Nantucket, he knew who he was going to speak with. When Hillary went to Nantucket, she knew who she was going to go speak with and confer with about who was going to attain the office of the presidency of the United States of America. So they both knew. If Trump had showed up and told them to go to hell, he never would have gotten elected. These people are very powerful. Or, maybe I'm wrong, maybe he would have gotten more votes, right? Or maybe he just would have been taken out. I do worry, and I say so on Facebook quite a bit, that I'm worried for Trump because of the treason in the FBI, etc., and the higher-ups in government, pervading many departments, I would think. These are what I call the Bush-Clinton, small c on Clinton, Bush-Clinton oligarchy machine people. And for so many years, they've done quite well. Their families have done quite well. So the question is, if you love your country, the United States of America, more than you do this band of criminals on Nantucket who orchestrated the DNA switch, do you love those people? This is a direct line to enter onto Nantucket with many subpoenas to these people. If Bill Weld would talk, which he won't, and Mike Dukakis, if these political people, if they were being pressed, they would talk. But, is it likely they will be pressed? Chances are, with a logjam break that Trump could orchestrate with Steve Scannell's DNA switch, what happened here, did it happen? Yes or no, did it happen? Okay, if it did happen, then we have some murders to look into, potentially murders, which I'm saying are more than the 4 I named, Paul, Eileen, David, and Jimmy John Capricorn. There's more to it than that, actually, I believe. And I would postulate that these theories could be correct. And unless you have proof, unless you have proof of such a thing, then you got to be kind of careful, all right? So that's kind of the way I am. But America's going down the wrong road. So in a way, I hate everyone. Just like when Germany let Hitler take over Germany. And I said that when I was a kid about Germany. I hate Germany. They let Hitler take over. They let this happen. It was on them. So in that respect, you'd have to be a psycho to really, truly hate a baby. Let's say a little baby. Do you hate that little baby? That's in the category of everyone. But broadly speaking, politically speaking, if you are a citizen in a country and you give the oligarchy, and many people say, yes, we do have an oligarchy now. Like we have the Republicans, we have the Democrats, and we have the rich people who do the bidding of the oligarchy in the Democratic Party. We have the rich people who do the bidding of the rich people in the Republican Party. So essentially, we have a third party involved here, which we have been warned about. But unless we see things clearly, now with this DNA switch issue, if it happens and materializes that, yes, it happened, that my loving, good son, wasn't from me, he was from who I knew he was from, who's passed away now. And, okay, so it's not the worst thing in the world. I'm not saying that's the worst thing in the world, but it made for strange political bedfellows, not with me, but, if you need to have your honor saved and you're friends with the Clintons, they'll help you out. So I'm saying that's what happened. So the FBI did itself and the country a favor, essentially, when they screwed up, because now we can use this. And it's clear cut. Did it happen or did it not happen? Am I a paranoid schizophrenic off his meds, as well as bipolar, hypomanic, delusions of grandeur, delusions of a jealous nature. Oh, I was mentioning the delusions of a jealous nature before the DNA swab test was done, and that was done after I got out of Taunton State Hospital. They came up, who's they? The lawyers came up with this delusions of a jealous nature because I said my wife was not loyal and this kid was born out of wedlock, and I'm saying I need a DNA test. So they said, you're crazy, essentially, before the DNA test was accomplished. And I remember on the bus in P-Town when I was driving the bus, I had a couple people on the bus who were appellate lawyers with the California Court of Appeals. I told them this whole story, and they were horrified that happened. That before a DNA test swab was done, here we have these lawyers, and these psych people agree with the lawyers. They're little puppets, you know. They said, yeah, he's crazy. He thinks his wife was fooling around. So that's not central in my life, but it was used against me to kill me, to help save somebody's honor, that they should not have to suffer with the paternity issue. Now that little boy was a great little boy, played football, did everything right, and his sister, Emily, very good kids, very lucky. So who's not to say, you know, if it had been my kid, the kid would have been different or worse. You know, who knows? God knows. God only knows. God's in charge, as Pam would say. Anyway, Tom is a firefighter with the Newton Fire Department, and Emily is happily married with 2 kids, so I've got 2 grandchildren. My kids are doing tremendously well. Would I change anything? I don't. Maybe that's an insult to God to change things in the past. You know, you have to lean on God and depend that God knows what's going on and He has your back. The clergy on Cape Cod don't have my back, but God does. I'm okay with that. The clergy on Cape Cod are just rubbish. They're so weak with something like this. And, you know, the gay thing with the Catholic Church, too, lends itself to weakness, I think. And that's in my background, you know, pedophilia in my family, with gay people being weak and not doing the right thing. No big deal. I'm okay. But you have all these instructors in life, and they can be incidents that you might say, oh, that's pretty bad. You know, like this DNA switch has been bad for me. But remember the last show I did was all about these blimps, and I called the blimp system the Paradise blimp system. And I spoke to my kids this Christmas, and I said, hey, do you remember on Nantucket, I was designing blimps? 5 minutes. And they said, yes. So it goes way back. I've had this fascination with blimps. I think they came around and, wow, look at that, you know, blimp. The Goodyear blimp would go up and down the beach when I was a little kid. You know, it's crazy to talk about a blimp fighting a fire, so let's just end that right there, right? But I explained it so well. But if you were an artist doing an artist rendering, you could explain it and people could see it. So I'm looking for the artist to do some rendering. I'm looking for my entire copy, my entire file to be copied with the blimps. So President Trump can have a look at it and say, this guy's a sharp guy. You know, what are you doing to this guy? He's my man, Steve Scannell, right? I love Trump. Pam and I love Trump. It has decreased my blood pressure because I am so happy. Not that I don't have a blood pressure issue, but boy, Trump has made me so happy. He has given me a renewed spirit in America, and I love him for that. You know, I love the guy. Warts and all. But Trump should say, hey, wait a minute, this guy's designing blimps. What do you think of that? You know, is this a blimp designer who's a paranoid schizophrenic off his meds? You know? Well, maybe. Yeah, that could be. But, you know, paranoid schizophrenic people and delusional people tend to have these long histories where they're going off their nut. You know, where am I going off my nut? I'm saying my son is not from my loins. And I was determined then to be off my nut because they needed to do somebody a favor. You know, that's mental illness. Well, these days, I think the oligarchy does whatever it wants to do. They do whatever. They're Nantucket rich people. And they put these puppets in place, like Charlie Baker. He's a puppet. And we could have had a real good man, Scott Lively. But no, you know, we didn't do that. We wanted to get the puppet back in there. So there's a contingent of the Democrats and there's a contingent of the Republicans. This was what makes the sickness so deep-seated. This oligarchy is a sickness of a democracy. It is a favor-based subsystem that eventually, like a parasite, it gets in and conquers its host. And we're looking at that. I'm looking at that. You may be fat and happy and have a government job. 2 minutes. Okay, 2 minutes to go. What do I say? You may be fat and happy. Well, maybe you are. That's great. Good for you. You know, I want to be fat and happy too. You know, I want my systems looked at, not shunned. I don't want to be shunned by Cape Cod. I'm being shunned by Cape Cod because you love corruption. If that's not true, get into it with this DNA switch with your sheriff and say, you know, what do you know? You know, and but by the way, we need a grand jury. After Trump says, just find out. You know, find out. I want the grand jury on this immediately and find out if there was a DNA switch, and then the murders after that will be looked into. Otherwise, it's yours truly, paranoid, schizophrenic, off his meds. 1 minute to go. Well, I've always been pretty level-headed, even as a kid. You know, I took judo, I went offshore. My first trip was age 14. I wasn't a mentally ill, sick little child. I was a tough kid. By the time I was 18, I had a big resume, you know, fishing on this boat and that, doing this job and that job. You know, I was pretty together. I didn't all of a sudden go haywire when I said, excuse me, there was a DNA test and it's been compromised and corrupted, and I know this. It's not 80%. It's 100% I do know, because it was admitted to me that this child's not mine. It was admitted to me, and I knew, because we were having very, very protected relationship at that point, and I knew that wasn't my kid, and I knew, you know, this person, I married her. She was wonderful as a wife in so many ways, but not in the way of fidelity. Thanks for watching the Scannell Agenda.